He walked into his own store pretending to be a stranger. What the cashier said next didn't just shock him. It changed everything he thought he knew about himself. Ritik Khanna wasn't just the owner of Urban Bites, one of the fastest-growing café chains in the country. He was also someone who never forgot what it meant to struggle. Years ago, he had been a waiter, cleaning tables for tips that barely covered his bus fare. That version of him still lived quietly inside. So when his board proposed closing a few underperforming branches to maximize profits, Ritik hesitated. Before making the call, he decided to see for himself. No cameras, no team, just a hoodie, jeans, and a walk into one of his oldest branches, one that was flagged for low revenue. It was a Tuesday evening. The cafe was nearly empty. A young woman behind the counter looked up with a polite but tired smile. "Good evening, sir. You're just in time. We have fresh banana muffins." Her name tag read, Anaya. Ritik nodded, ordered a muffin and coffee, then sat in the corner, observing. What he saw stunned him. Anaya didn't just serve customers. She talked to them, checked in on an old man's blood pressure, slipped an extra cookie into a crying toddler's bag. She even packed leftovers for a regular customer who came in late every night, without charging him. None of it was in the training manual. And yet, it was everything the brand stood for. Later, as Ritik walked to the counter to leave, she smiled again and said something that made him freeze. "This place means the world to me. I know it's small, and people barely notice it. But one day, I hope the owner realizes how much heart this little cafe really has." She didn't know who she was talking to. But he did. And those words hit deeper than any business report ever could. Ritik couldn't sleep that night. Anaya's words played in his head on a loop. Not just what she said, but how she said it. With conviction. With care. With something that couldn't be taught in training slides. He returned the next evening. This time he waited until the shift ended. As Anaya stepped out of the cafe, her backpack slung low and her hair tied in a messy bun. She jumped slightly when she saw him standing by the exit. "Oh, you again?" She smiled politely. Ritik nodded. "Mind if I walk with you?" She hesitated, but agreed. They walked down the quiet lane, past shuttered shops and sleepy streetlights. Then he asked, "Why do you care so much about the cafe?" "Most people your age are just looking for a paycheck." She looked up at the sky as if collecting her thoughts. "My dad worked in this very spot when it used to be a rundown tea stall," she said. "He cleaned tables for 15 years, saved every rupee to send me to school. The day he died, this cafe opened." She paused. "I took it as a sign. I applied for the job the same day. Been here ever since." Ritik's throat tightened. And the kindness? The cookies? The food for the old man? She shrugged. "It's just what my dad used to do. He said service isn't about rules, it's about people." Then she chuckled softly. "I guess it's silly to care so much. No one really notices." But someone had noticed, and he wasn't just a stranger in a hoodie anymore. Ritik stopped walking. "You said yesterday that you hope the owner realizes what this place means." She nodded, a bit embarrassed. He pulled down his hood and said gently, "I'm the owner." Anaya's eyes widened. Her hand flew to her mouth. I didn't mean anything disrespectful, I swear." Ritik held up a hand. "You didn't offend me. You reminded me." She looked at him, confused. "Of what?" He smiled quietly. "Of who I was before I got lost in spreadsheets." The next morning, word spread like wildfire. The owner of Urban Bites had personally visited the cafe, twice. But the real shock came at noon, when Ritik returned, not with a clipboard, but with a cake. He walked in, placed it on the counter, and called out, "Staff meeting." Now. Anaya, nervous and still unsure of what was coming, stepped out from the kitchen, followed by the 2 part-time servers and the kitchen helper. Ritik stood at the center of the room, looked around, and said calmly, "This cafe is not closing. In fact, from today forward, it's being turned into our flagship People First branch." Everyone blinked. He continued, "No metrics, no pressure. This place is now the heartbeat of Urban Bites. Every new employee will train here, not just to learn how to serve food, but how to serve people." He turned to Anaya. "And you," he said, "are now the new head of training and guest experience across all 47 branches." Anaya froze. "Me?" Ritik nodded. "You've done more for this brand than half our leadership combined. You've lived our values when we forgot them." Tears welled in her eyes. "But I'm not qualified. I haven't even finished college yet." "You've finished something better," he smiled. "You've graduated in humanity." The staff clapped. The old man she always fed stopped by with flowers. Even customers began showing up after hearing the news online. But the moment that meant the most to Anaya wasn't the applause. It was when Ritik quietly handed her a small notebook. Her father's name was etched in gold on the front. "This was in our archives," he said. "He worked here before we built the brand. Turns out, your dad was our first employee." She gasped, clutching it to her chest. And in that moment, everything made sense. She hadn't just honored his memory. She'd kept his legacy alive. Within weeks, the story made headlines. CEO discovers star employee while undercover, promotes her on the spot. From cashier to culture head. How one woman reminded a CEO what really matters. But what the articles didn't capture was how everything changed. Not just for Anaya, but for Urban Bites as a whole. Every new staff member was now trained under the People First model, led by Anaya. She didn't teach them how to upsell or stick to scripts. She taught them how to see people. How to notice the lonely man who only orders 1 tea a day, she'd say. How to recognize the tired mom who just needs a seat and a smile. How to make a cafe feel like home. Ritik started spending more time in local branches. He listened more. He watched more. And with every cup served, he saw the ripple effect of one girl who didn't wait for promotion or praise to make her space better. A year later, Urban Bites opened its 100th location. Not in a mall, not in a metro city, but in a small-town cafe where the ribbon was cut by Mrs. Day, a retired teacher who had once taught Anaya's father how to read. The cafe was named Legacy Brew, and on its wall hung 2 framed photos, one of Anaya's father, smiling in his faded apron, the other of Anaya handing a coffee to a child, and beneath them a plaque read, "They didn't serve customers. They served hearts. That's the difference." Ritik stood quietly before the wall, no cameras in sight, and whispered, "You reminded me what this business is about, not profit, but people." And somewhere in the background, a voice echoed softly, "You dropped your mission, sir. I just picked it back up for you."